Colorado gets embarrassed on Saturday, and they're going to let everyone down, just not in the way you think.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, which is so in full swing, and it's great to have it truly back. This episode brought to you by our friends at 5-Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. Couple of teams stunned at home, Notre Dame and Auburn. I've got thoughts on those games coming up later. And a couple of teams that were not stunned in the upset fashion, but were, steamrolling, shall we say. Tennessee and good old Washington State. Got to talk about that because Texas Tech got run off the face of the earth. So let's start with Colorado, though. Why do I say the Buffs are going to let people down? Because this game, 28-10, the final score, Nebraska beats Colorado in Lincoln. I thought the Buffs would lose by 10. They lost by 18. It was once not very close. The Buffs kind of made it close. Well, not really, but they made it closer at the end. Here's why Colorado is going to let you down. Everyone is going to watch this game, or has watched this game, and is going to then translate the projection of this game onto every other Colorado matchup this year. And I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. For all of you Colorado haters out there, for people who can't stand Deion Sanders, who don't like that Shedeur Sanders left the game early, which I'll say I did not care for unless there's a reason that he did so that I am not aware of at this time. I don't like him calling out his offensive line either. He doesn't need to do those things. I don't think that helps. Still, this is one of the toughest games on Colorado's schedule. Nebraska is a good football team. I don't know if they're ready to play with the Ohio States of the world and make a college football playoff push. I predicted Nebraska to go 9-3 coming into the year. They might very well be undefeated by the time they play Ohio State. Still got to win those games, but they looked quite good. They run the football. Raiola is legit. The defense is still good. It is a ferocious front seven that mauled the Colorado offensive line for a second straight year, but this year they had a quarterback in there. But everyone's going to watch this game that doesn't like Colorado, and they are going to think, oh, I'm going to be able to root against Colorado every week, and they're going to get blasted into oblivion every week. No, they're not. No, they are not. Nebraska might be the best team on Colorado's schedule by the time they play each of their next 10 opponents. Now, that's not a guarantee because there are some good teams on the schedule. Kansas State is there. Arizona's there. Arizona's not been impressive through the first couple weeks. Let's see how they fare with Kansas State on Friday night. That game is on Fox. Utah is on the schedule. Oklahoma State is on the schedule, but who else is on Colorado's schedule? Allow me to list you the opponents that Colorado is going to play in the next 3 weeks. At Colorado State, that was a fun game last year. Hosting Baylor, at Central Florida. I think the Buffs are going to win at least 2 of those games. You know why? Because none of those teams are on the same level as Nebraska. So if you looked just at the box score, or if you watched Colorado get embarrassed on Saturday, and you thought to yourself as someone who doesn't like Colorado, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. They're going to get blown out every week. No, they are not. Nebraska is good, and they are better than almost every team Colorado is going to play for the rest of this season. All 3 of those teams are worse than Nebraska. Kansas State might be about the same as Nebraska. Arizona might be about the same or a little bit worse. Cincinnati, not as good as Nebraska. Texas Tech, nope. Utah could be similar level. We'll see if Cam Rising can keep himself healthy. Kansas could be similar level. They lost to Illinois over the weekend. Oklahoma State got pushed by a bottom-tier SEC team in Arkansas. There is no team on that schedule that is decisively better. So if you're hoping that Colorado is going to get blasted every week, I'm sorry to report that's not going to happen. This team is exactly what I thought they would be. I thought the O-line might play a little bit better against Nebraska. Turns out their front 4 is better, and portaling in an offensive line, it requires some chemistry. It will get better. The Buffs are still, I stand by this, they're a better team now than they were a season ago. I think they're going to make a bowl game. At the very least, they'll be a 5-win team, and that's more wins than they had last year, but they probably wind up winning 6 games. Deion Sanders is still really good. Every game's not going to be in that hostile environment. Most games are not going to feature a defense other than Utah that is in the same breath as Nebraska. So Colorado is not going to fall off the face of the earth. They're going to beat Colorado State this week in Fort Collins, and then the hype train will be back, and I'll have to cool down the people that are on the pro-Colorado side of things. It's kind of fun being in the middle. It's kind of fun. That's where I've tried to stay because that's where I've always been with the Buffs, and I think I've been pretty right so far. So that's the thought on Colorado. Can we flip over to Nebraska for a moment? This is a good football team. Matt Rhule is a good coach. That defensive staff is awesome. I'm going to be shocked, not surprised. I'm going to be shocked if at the end of this season, Nebraska retains all of their defensive coaching staff because they were great last year in what was an immediate turnaround. They went from 27 points per game allowed to around 17 in one season. And so far, they've given up 7 points to UTEP, who's not a good FBS team, and they've given up 10 points to Colorado. Those are the games. Now, they have to prove that they can do this away from Lincoln. They've played their first 2 games at home. Okay, completely fair if you want to ask that question about Nebraska. But here are the questions you can't ask. Is this a capable, competent program? Are they well run? Are they significantly improved from last year with Dylan Raiola at quarterback? These are all obvious questions. Isaiah Nair at wide receiver. The running back room, they brought in the Oregon transfer Dante Dowdell, who contributes. He's not the main guy. He's one of the guys. And they all look good. They all look good. The offensive line play is more than capable. I'm impressed with Nebraska. I'm impressed. And guess what? I expected good things of them. I predicted them before the year to go 9-3. That prediction looks pretty darn solid right about now. We'll see how they match up against Ohio State. I don't know if they're ready for that just yet. But if you're a Nebraska fan and you're looking at what Matt Rhule has done over the last couple of years, you have to feel great. There was a sign that was brought to the stadium on Saturday night that said, "Is this the Nebraska football my dad tells me about?" Not quite. I think a little kid had it up. Not quite, youngling. But it's getting there. It is moving in that direction. And Raiola's at the center of it. This guy's a true freshman. This guy is a true freshman, and he's darn impressive. Is he anywhere near the ceiling? Nope. But is he more than serviceable right now? Yeah, he's good. He's good. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman Trophy this year or lead Nebraska to a Big Ten championship. I'm just saying Nebraska is good. They're on the up and up. They are absolutely on the rise. I bought into them before the year, and I'm buying into them during the year. That was a complete football game. They were completely better than Colorado on both sides of the ball. They should have been. They were. The fans got what they wanted. They have some tougher games coming up than Colorado on their schedule. But boy, you have to like the early returns in Lincoln if you're a Nebraska fan. And Nebraska fans deserve it as much as anyone, frankly. They do. They do. They have been through the ringer. This team is going to go past just making a bowl game this year. You're trying to get into a really good bowl game or win a game that maybe you shouldn't. Nebraska plays USC this year. Boy, is that going to be fun. With a couple of Big Ten powerhouses. Can't you hear the excitement in my voice for that? Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB. That's the handle. So Colorado's going to be fine. Nebraska is fine and will continue to improve. Oh, right. Let's talk about Notre Dame and Auburn because those were disasters over the weekend. That's coming up next. Coming up right now is 5-Hour Energy. So if you have a to-do list, if you have a DIY project, or if you just need to pick me up after lunch, guess what? That's what you need 5-Hour Energy for. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Whatever you're trying to get done. If you need some juice before you go play golf, or before you work out, or to do chores around the house, or to do busy work, whatever you need, 5-Hour Energy helps you. They've got watermelon flavor, tropical burst grape, and a bunch more. You can get your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. It's that easy. How easy exactly? This easy. Go to 5-Hour Energy, that's the number 5, and then hourenergy.com. Get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order. Cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Disaster in South Bend. Disaster at Jordan-Hare. Let's talk about those epic collapses. So when you think that college football makes sense, just remember that it doesn't. I cannot explain to you how a team can go into College Station and beat a, albeit brand new coaching staff, which is why I thought Marcus Freeman and company would go into College Station and beat Texas A&M. They did. Still a talented roster. It wasn't Connor Wigman's first game at quarterback, and the defense looked great, and the offense did enough. Whose defense is bigger, faster, stronger? Texas A&M's or Northern Illinois'? Well, the answer is Texas A&M's, and yet Notre Dame loses a football game at home. 28.5 point favorite. I don't have an explanation as to why this happened. I don't have an explanation as to why Marcus Freeman has a track record at this point of losing to teams he has no business losing to. He's lost to Marshall at home. He's lost to Northern Illinois at home. He lost to a horrible Stanford team at home. I mean, I don't know. Because I like Marcus Freeman as a coach. I think he has improved the program from the moment that he first took over. He's got a veteran quarterback. You brought in one of the best offensive coordinators in the country from LSU in Mike Denbrock, who coached the Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels last year, and you couldn't score 20 points on Northern Illinois at home? At home? Complete and total disaster for the Irish. I mean, just a calamitous loss. But in the 12-team playoff, guess what? They can still make it in. So for those of you that love to sing the praises of the 12-team playoff and how wonderful and glorious it is, I remind you that as exciting as Northern Illinois was, if you haven't seen their coach's post-game interview, by the way, please go do that. It's delightfully good. It's delightfully good. It warms the soul, no matter who you're rooting for, even if you're a Notre Dame fan, because that win meant everything to him and his program. Absolutely everything. And it makes the college football regular season so special and unique and great. But in the 12-team playoff, guess what? Notre Dame, still alive for it. Still alive for it. I'm sure some of you are furious at the Associated Press, who ranked Notre Dame number 25, Northern Illinois number 25, just so they could keep Notre Dame in the top 25 at number 18, I think is where they came in. Yeah, you say that now until Northern Illinois goes 12-0 in the Mid-American Conference and is the college football playoff team that we never saw coming. I am so rooting for that right now. Like, you can't believe. More than I want my own teams to win, I want Northern Illinois to make the playoff. I'm just telling you that right now. It'd be a great story. What if that kept Notre Dame out of the playoff? That would be exciting. Ordinarily, this loss would keep Notre Dame out of the playoff. In the 12-team era, it doesn't. If Notre Dame wins out, which they're entirely capable of doing, they're going to be in the playoff. If they go 10-2, it'll be a consideration because Northern Illinois is a pretty bad loss. It's still going to be feasible because if that 10-2, let's say, includes a loss to Louisville, but has a win at USC the last week of the regular season, which I think is going to be a win for the Trojans, and boy, did they look good through the first couple of weeks, that changes the calculus. But if Notre Dame wins the rest of their games, they're into the playoff. If Notre Dame is 10-2, probably in. I will say, I will give the 12-team playoff this. When you have a dud of a preseason top 10 team like Florida State not going to be a quality win anymore for Notre Dame, that certainly alters the conversation. Because that schedule for Notre Dame is one of the most manageable and one of the weakest in all of college football. If Notre Dame has another bad loss on the schedule, I don't think they can get into the playoff even at 10-2. If you have two losses to, I'm just spitballing on a bad loss here, Army, and who ran a beautiful fake field goal the other day, if you're wondering, which you should be, because why wouldn't you be? If they lose to Army and they've lost to Northern Illinois, and they beat everyone else. They beat Louisville, they beat Florida State, they beat Georgia Tech, and they beat USC. Should that 10-2 Notre Dame team be in the playoff? Boy, that'd be a fascinating question. To me, the answer is absolutely positively not. You lost to Army in Northern Illinois. That's not a playoff resume. But will the committee see it that way? I don't know. Who runs college football? Oh, that's right. Television networks. So we'll just have to wait and see. But pretty bad situation there for Notre Dame. Their season is not over thanks to the 12-team playoff, but they are on thin ice. Speaking of thin ice, that's not where Hugh Freeze is as a head coach, but certainly you had fans metaphorically fall through the ice in The Dark Knight Rises and do the plunge down into the water in which you're dead in seconds because Cal walked into Jordan-Hare Stadium and beat the Tigers. What a win for Justin Wilcox. It's the second time. This is going to surprise people, but this is true. This is the second time that Justin Wilcox has led the California Golden Bears into SEC country and walked out with a win. I tell you what, the Cal social team was on fire, understandably so. I predicted Cal to go 6-6 before the year. I'm not sold they aren't going to do that, by the way, because they have a tendency to play up and down to their level of competition. But they played up to Auburn's level, and they outplayed the Tigers in their home stadium. I like Auburn's offseason. They were a 6-6 team last year. They should have been 7-5 if not for a 4th and 31. They bring in a new crop of wide receivers. They should have a good running game. Peyton Thorne's not that guy. He just isn't. I think Auburn is going to look back at this season and say it's what could have been if there had been a better quarterback in place. That's how it feels. Peyton Thorne could not orchestrate quality drives. Peyton Thorne could not consistently complete passes. This was not a loss by the Auburn defense. Did they play perfectly? I'm sure Auburn fans would tell you the answer to that question is no. My prediction for the game was Auburn 31, Cal 20. Well, Cal walked away with 21 points. That's right where my expectation was for the defense. Cal's got some guys on offense. Fernando Mendoza was a Heisman Trophy winner for a little while, but they still walked away with just 21 points. This was all on the offense. That falls on Hugh Freeze. That falls on Peyton Thorne. This is not on the same level of a calamitous home defeat as Notre Dame losing to a team out of the Mid-American Conference in Northern Illinois. But boy, this was a stunner. And this is a massive disappointment for Auburn fans who I think reasonably didn't have incredibly lofty goals for this year, but had expectations of winning 7 to 8 games. That feels like it could be a struggle if they play like that. What's your answer going to be at quarterback? Where are you going to turn? Are you going to go back to Peyton Thorne? Because that didn't look like a solution for navigating an SEC schedule that is not exactly a walk in the park. You've got Alabama, and that just feels, look, anything can happen in the Iron Bowl, but not in Tuscaloosa, even though the Crimson Tide didn't play their best game over the weekend against South Florida, who's probably a pretty good team in the American Athletic Conference. That's a disappointing game for Auburn. Really, really disappointing. I liked Auburn coming into the year. They can still salvage the season, win 7-8 games. But you have to look at certain games on Auburn's schedule differently. The Missouri game, the Arkansas game, the Oklahoma game. What did Oklahoma do? Houston stinks, and Oklahoma scraped by. Welcome to college football, folks. This stuff doesn't always make sense. That's why it's fun, and you play the games on the field. But Auburn can still achieve its goals this year, but they need a lot more out of Peyton Thorne, or it is going to be a frustrating few weeks down there in Auburn. You know where it's not frustrating? Up in Knoxville. Tennessee, riding high. They steamrolled, dog-walked, slapped around NC State. They're not the only team that did that and is feeling good. That is coming up next. First, let's talk about Ibotta. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer, but you were dreading the cost when you did it? Are you buying things for summer, fueling up for next year? Are you buying holiday gifts, whatever you're going for, but you're worried about the cost? go check out Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. What would you do if you had an extra $256 in your pocket? You tell me, would you buy a flight? Would you go on a shopping spree? Would you have a fancy dinner? Would you ball out making or buying the best Christmas gift possible? I don't know. You tell me. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Tennessee 51, NC State 10. Now, Tennessee fans, you and I have, let's just say, a strenuous relationship at the moment. Before the year, I said Tennessee would go either 9-3 or 8-4. I don't know. I feel like that NC State game was a toss-up. Need more information. Well, I got some information. I picked the Vols. I did not have them winning by 41 points in this particular game. Now, I think Nico Imaliava is impressive. I think he looks poised. He had a couple of interceptions in this game. You're going to do that in your first full year starting. Any quarterback is going to throw interceptions. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about a lot with Tennessee. I'm not shifting my expectations, though. NC State came into this season, frankly, I thought with a chance to win 10 games for the first time in the Dave Doran era. They could still accomplish that, but not if they get worked like that in the trenches. This was not a Nico game. This was a Tennessee trenches game because Tennessee ran for, wait for it, 249 yards, 5.7 yards a carry. That's pretty good. Dylan Sampson had 132 of those yards. Nico had 65. How many yards do you think NC State ran for in the game? 39. Tennessee's third leading rusher outgained the entire Wolfpack team on the ground. Yeah, that'll do to win you a football game. 249-39 on the ground. I can't remember a ranked Power 4 matchup where there was this big of a rushing disparity. Utter dominance in the trenches on both sides by Tennessee. Now, here's why I haven't changed my expectations for Tennessee, because my record prediction coming into the year is 9-3, and they're sitting at 2-0, and they dominated this game. Yes, they were very impressive. They beat NC State by more than I thought. This was actually a close game at the end of the first half. Don't worry, Tennessee fans, I'm not making the point that you think I'm making. This was a close game, and then Tennessee kind of decided, you know what? Why don't we make this not a close game? Why don't we make this the opposite of a close game? NC State was driving down late in the first half to tie the game down 10-3, and then, oopsie daisies, ball's going the other way. Grayson McCall, 15-22, 104 yards and interception. Not what the Wolfpack thought they were getting in the Coastal Carolina transfer. Here's the good news. Tennessee has got that SEC physicality, or at least they had it on display on Saturday night in the Dukes Mayo Classic. NC State's going to have greener pastures ahead. Tennessee is going to have the opposite. They're going to have tougher games on the schedule. So I was impressed with what Tennessee did in this football game. Make no mistake about it. They have been lights out through the first two games. I don't think you could have two more impressive scores than 69-3 and 51-10. They have Kent State this week. I bid you good luck and glad tidings to the Golden Flashes. They're going to go into Knoxville and get their brains beat in. Of course, now that I've said that, I'm sure Kent State will push Tennessee. That's just how college football works and such. But here's what I want to ask Vols fans. You had a greater than 200-yard rushing advantage in this game. Nico is proving to be plenty capable. They're not running the offense through him, though. They want to run the ball, and that's what Josh Heupel's done the last couple of years, and they've been very successful doing that. I expect him to continue doing that. Do you think you will outgain Oklahoma by 200 yards on the ground? Do you think that you will outgain Alabama by 200 yards on the ground? Do you think you will outgain Georgia by 200 yards on the ground? Those are the questions that I have for you. That's it. That's the only question I have for Tennessee. Are you going to outgain those teams by 200 yards on the ground? Probably not. So at some point, Nico might need to go for more than just 200 yards and a couple scored. Now, I know he went for over 300 against Chattanooga. That's Chattanooga. At some point, Tennessee is going to face an SEC team that'll match them in the trenches, make it hard, and they'll have to have Nico put on a little bit of a Superman cape. And I wonder what happens when that arrives. But Tennessee looking very impressive through the first couple of weeks. It is early yet. I'm sticking with my 9-3 prediction right now. I feel just fine about it. So, discuss below. Last thing today, they're not the only team that rolled. Did you see what happened in Pullman? I had to issue a public apology on the Locked On College Football Twitter account to Washington State fans because, you know, they played Texas Tech, and the Red Raiders were seen in some circles as a potential Big 12 dark horse. Now, they didn't lose a Big 12 football game, so it's not as if they, have literally taken a step back. They just have glaring questions after they walked into the Palouse with aspirations of perhaps winning the football game and were instead summarily blasted into oblivion 37-16. Now, it's no 51-10, of course, but Washington State put up 70 points against Portland State, 37 against Texas Tech. So the Red Raiders did not solve their defensive problems. And then they ran into offensive issues facing a higher quality opponent in the Cougs. It's too early to talk about Washington State and the college football playoff. I'm just saying in the first game, John Mateer was over 300 yards passing. And in the second game, he was just under 200 yards rushing. This is a guy you should know. This is Cam Ward's replacement, and he looks up to the task. He showcased the arm in week 1. He showcased the legs in week 2. Now, does it concern me? They played a Power 4 team, and he was 9 of 19 passing for 115 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because you are not going to be able to run for 200 yards against everybody. That is a Texas Tech problem, and their defensive problems are well documented at this point, and boy, it is not trending the right direction down there in Lubbock. But Washington State's got the Apple Cup this week. And Washington, through the first couple of games, they started a little sluggish against Eastern Michigan, but overall, they look pretty good. They look pretty darn good. And Washington State, through the first couple of games, boy, they look pretty good. And if that game goes in the Cougars' direction, allow me to read you their schedule. After Washington, which is a neutral site game in Seattle, probably be a home game for the Huskies. San Jose State, that'll be a win. At Boise State, that'll be a fantastic football game is what that will be. At Fresno State, that's a tough one. Hawaii at San Diego State, Utah State at New Mexico, at Oregon State hosts Wyoming. Wyoming, by the way, lost to FCS Idaho this week at home. So in the next month of the season, Washington State will have the opportunity to put themselves in the playoff discussion. If you go 12-0 with this schedule, you're going to make the college football playoff. Do they go 12-0? Probably not. You have to go at Boise, at Fresno, at Oregon State. That's a tough trio of road games there. That's not an easy break to have that be your road lineup of games. But are they impressive? Did they surprise me? Yeah. Did I think they could win the game? Of course. I just thought Texas Tech would. It's the pick I made. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. I know better than to pick against Washington State. In the non-conference slate at home up in the Palouse, they're 3-0 last 3 years. Wisconsin twice, and now Texas Tech. But here's the important thing for Washington State. Yes, over the course of this season, you want to win as many football games as you can because, well, it's fun to win. And, hey, what if Washington State could get into the playoff? It'd be an at-large berth. But again, if you go 12-0, if you got to win against Texas Tech in dominant fashion and Washington, if you were to win big, I mean, it'd be hard to ignore. That's all I'm saying, it'd be hard to ignore. What did I talk about going into this game for Washington State? Every single game you play this year, if you're Washington State and Oregon State, is a little bit of a trial, a little bit of an audition, a little bit of a reminder to everybody in the realignment space what you're capable of. Well, you just took what is expected to be an average to above average Big 12 team and you ran them out of the building. You think anybody noticed? I noticed. Do you think I'm the only one? I doubt it. You got to keep stacking up wins like that, and that is a great step for Washington State to say, hey, here we are in year one of this de facto relegation in the Mountain West, and we are above that particular level. Now, they have to show that over the next 10 games. They started hot last year. They were 4-0. They were ranked 13th in the country, and then they cratered and they went 1-7 down the stretch. Can't have that happen again. But if they put together a 10-11 win season, all I'll say on the realignment front, it doesn't hurt your chances. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.